Intercom's AI-first customer service platform answers 50% of questions in seconds. That means happier customers. And Fin AI Copilot, our new personal AI assistant for every support agent, means more efficient teams. It's a win-win. The platform also provides insights for managers, and it's simple to set up and use. That makes Intercom a win-win, win-win-win. Intercom, AI-first customer service.
The views, opinions, or advice offered by this show's host do not necessarily reflect those of News Talk 780 KOH or its parent company, Cumulus Media. This is Bosma On Business with award-winning entrepreneur Mike Bosma, sponsored by Keystone CPAs. We're getting Northern Nevada back to business.
Good morning, business owners. It's Mike Bosma, your business savvy CPA, coming to you from the KOH studio. Hey, you Garden Show listeners, you want to hang tight and hang on. Today's installment of Bosma On Business, I've got Linda Chamah, who's going to tell us about how to count all those cabbages in that garden, you know, that winter vegetable. Now, it's a different kind of cabbage that we count Saturday mornings every week for 60 minutes. It's kind of could be cabbage that goes into your wallet, some veggies or greenbacks. And, of course, as I mentioned, today's installment, no different. You know, one of the things I love about this season, it's basketball frenzy time, and so that's fun. And, of course, tomorrow we've got the NCAA tournament selection, and hoping all of our fun teams make it to the basketball tournament. But one of the things that I'm passionate about is just helping people find their way as business owners, and very excited that, as I mentioned, Linda Chamah, CPA, is part of Keystone CPAs and heads our outsourced accounting department. Without further ado, Linda, welcome to Bosma On Business.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. My
pleasure. So, Linda, give us a little bit about your background. How did you get to where you are in life?
All right. So, Mike, it's been a long journey. I started my career about 22 years ago, to be precise. And straight out of college, I happened to intern in Deloitte at the time. And for some years, I was in Deloitte. They liked what I was doing, and I was retained as a perm from them. That was the start of my career, from consulting to audit to financial advisory. One thing led to another. And from there, I went into industry. From industry, I'm here now at Keystone CPAs.
Well, and glad to have you. You've been a game changer for the firm. So talk to us about, when you went from public accounting to industry, how was that transition?
I would say it was an interesting one because from public accounting, I had the opportunity to deal with different clients. So it was more less tedious having to go into industry. However, that gave me the opportunity to put into bear all the skills I had acquired from public accounting. I was into oil and gas at the time, as well as real estate. So that was a great door opener for me at the time. So basically I would say it was great for me in terms of just learning more skills, specific skills, as opposed to working with diverse clients in public sector and bringing to bear every skill I had learned from the start of my career up until that point.
Yeah, and I think for the benefit of our listeners, a lot of times when you think of accountants, they think they're all cut from the same cloth. It's just not true. So a very diversified profession, and I think one of the things that we want to talk about on today's installment of Bosma On Business is really the back office part of the house, tightening up your accounting practices, kind of really the mistakes that, from an anecdotal perspective that we see people make, and then how to get things tightened up so that they have current, accurate financial statements to run their business, which is, I'd say, the high water mark of where you want to be as a business owner. Are you getting the information to run your business? And if you're getting that information, if you say, yeah, Bosma, I've got it. But if you're getting it from your online app from your bank to see how much money's in the bank, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about having some kind of financial reporting program to be able to really know how you're doing. So, Linda, talk to me about some of the problems that we see, with clients not being able to have current, accurate financial statements. Why does that happen?
Right. So most of the time, those clients don't have the technical know-how. to manage their books. Not necessarily a flaw, but that is not their expertise. So they just do the bookkeeping from, hey, this is inflows and outflows. But bookkeeping is beyond that. Bookkeeping needs professional expertise. You need to have a proper professional accountant manage your books, because when you do that, then can you have a holistic view of what your business practice is doing, and only then can you make informed decisions. Like it's popularly said, garbage in, garbage out. Whatever information you put in is, the output is what you get based on the quality of information you put in or you feed yourself. So most times clients don't have the know-how, to be honest, to manage their books like they should, and that's why we're here. We're here to help you. And the beautiful thing with our outsourced accounting department is we are very flexible. We can tailor our needs to suit your needs. We can meet you wherever you are, and it just gives you that luxury of having that expertise of a professional accountant managing your books for you.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we found, that most business owners have had, up until, if you're a professional service provider, $2 million of revenue, or, if you're a manufacturer, you get around 5 to 10. You're not big enough to really necessarily have full-time anything in-house. So that requires you to either do it yourself, which is oftentimes, or your spouse, right? I'll have my spouse do it, or you'll have the receptionist do it, just because all they're doing is, entering checks into QuickBooks. But that's not necessarily helping you run your business. So, and letting you know how profitable different things are. And ultimately, if you can't understand how much money you're making on whatever your goods or services are, you really can't navigate your business. And it's virtually impossible to look at your bottom line and to say, am I doing enough? Because if you're, let's say you have a robust top line revenue, bottom line net income, but you can always, The Great Game of Business, written by Jack Stack, is a good primer for business owners. And they talk about having every line on your income statement and balance sheet, somebody's responsible for it. And I think when you look at it that way, like how can we dive in and really massage these financials so that we can get better results? Because you can go out, you can always, I want to charge my customers more, but then you're going to maybe outcharge what the market will bear, and you lose your customers. So a lot of times you just have to be smart about how you spend money. And if you don't know what you're spending on, and you don't know if that makes sense, you can't benchmark that against your peers. Probably the best example I have is this. So a number of years ago, I had a service-based company. They were a client of one of my former teammates, so I had no visibility into this company. Again, they sold services. They were making about $3 million a year in revenue and making $150,000 a year of income to the owners. We call that sellers' discretionary earnings. And and I benchmarked it, and I said, well, gosh, guys, at $3 million, kind of your whole peers, if in your industry, and we have databases to look this up, you should be making, if you're average, 15% of your top line should hit your bottom line. So if you're at $3 million top line, you should be making $450,000. They're like, man, that's a lot. We'd love that, but we can't. I go, well, why can't you? Well, we over a series of months, we pressed into that, and we found, well, God, you have like 3 times as much inventory as your peers. Why do you have so much inventory? And they're like, well, and they kind of badge of honor. They're like, they sell hydraulic and install hydraulic hoses and fittings and pistons. And they said, well, because we have it in stock. Otherwise, people are just going to go to the internet and buy it off the internet. And I said, okay, so yeah. And a lot of times they're B2B, which means business to business. So their customers are all business owners. So if they have something broken, if they have a hose or a hydraulic pump that's broken, their business is shut down, which is costing them money. So I said, well, how do you price your inventory? You carry, so that way, if somebody has something break, they can just walk into your shop. They know they'll get it. And they said, oh, well, we price it the same as the internet. And I go, therein lies your problem, because I showed them how much the cost of carrying that inventory is costing them. Okay, so it's opportunity cost. So if you say, hey, if I can deploy $100 of capital, it should return in a business 20% return. I go, but so you should have in 20% markup minimum on that. And so we pressed in, and sure enough, they were able to reprice that walk-in type of stuff. And then, it was worth the premium because otherwise they knew that the people were losing on the other end. And I think a lot of business owners, you're not taking advantage of anybody there, but you have to be paid. You have to have margin for the investment you're making so people can walk into your shop and buy your stuff. And we did that, countless times over the last 3-4 years. And I met with them late last year doing year-end planning. And it was funny because they looked at me and they said, Bosma, I don't really know what you do. I'm like, well, geez, great, thanks. They said, but we've never had more money. That's what we know. And I thought, that's how it should work, right? If you're really pressing in to your financials and looking at it objectively, comparing yourself to your peers is a great way to do that. Then you just know, okay, am I making the right amount of money that I should, right? I don't have, I have other businesses. They have a niche business, and they make all the money. And what I tell them is they're growing and scaling is just assume that once you get on the radar. I had a guest on this show years ago. They cornered the market selling eyelashes. Who knew? Somebody would pay $100 for a set of eyelashes. God bless them. That they had crazy margin. And I said, just don't give yourself so much overhead that when the margin goes back to what it normally is, that it'll crater your business. Because that's just, you're making a lot of money, put in a lot of overhead, and just run it lean. Just run it like the end is near. And and then the difference between that and making money. So Linda, I'm curious again. Linda Chamah from Outsourced Accounting, Keystone CPAs, headquartered in Houston, Texas. Linda, what are some common areas that people kind of fall down on financial reporting?
Right. Thank you, Mike. So, like you rightly said, financial reporting is beyond just recording, right? So, we are looking at the business from a critical eye perspective. So, like you mentioned, it's beyond just, hey, did I make revenues? Hey, am I making profit? We're looking at the entire books of this company. We're looking at how is this company operating? Is it operating efficiently? Is it operating effectively? We're looking at operational efficiencies. Where can we reduce costs like you did for your client? Where can we maximize profits? So that's what we're looking at, such that when you pick up this financial, we are it's reading to you. You're understanding what's happening in your financials, and at a glance, you can tell, okay, where do I need to improve? Where are the places? Because the bottom line is, it's either you're doing one of two things. If you want to operate optimally, it's either you're reducing costs or you're maximizing your profits. So when you look at it, when you're reporting, how can we do all of this beyond just reporting based on the financial standards or the reporting requirements? How right. Can these companies be operating at an optimal level whereby, like you said, compared to their peers, how do they stand out? What are the industry norms? What's going on in the industry? What's going on in the economy? How does all of this impact this company such that the company is going to fulfill all its objectives, way more than its peers? I think that's where the value has been added for our clients.
No, I agree. On the phone, Linda Chamah from Keystone CPAs. When we come back, we're going to talk to you about some horror stories and people that don't have tight internal controls, and they let the fox into the hen house. When we come back, it's Bosma on Business. News Talk 780 KOH. Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. One of the things I appreciate about having experts around the table, Linda Chamah on the phone from Houston, Texas, heads up our outsourced accounting department, is having people that are smarter at stuff than I am. And it's just surround yourself with smart people. Life is good for you. And I think appreciated about Linda is with her background working for some very sophisticated CPA firms that, she brings a real skill set and expertise to our clients. Linda, I had a project that had a client that he had hired his own bookkeeper. She decided she wanted to have a gambling problem, started transferring money out multiple times a day of his account, ended up embezzling a couple $100,000 to go to I didn't even know you can gamble on Google. I didn't know it was a thing, but evidently it's terrible payout because, she lost it all. So, he gave his bookkeeper the access to his bank account to be able to transfer money. What are some, give our benefit of our listeners some insight into how they could run their business so they don't get ripped off?
Right. So first things first, it's essential you put in key controls and strict control measures to avoid losses and pilferages in your business. When given access to bank accounts and, key information concerning your business, it's advisable to put different layers of control. So what do I mean? If you want to give your bookkeeper access to your account, you don't necessarily have to give them ability to transact on your account. You could just give them a third-party view-only access, and with that, they have limited access to your account. They can view, but they don't have access to make transactions on your behalf, right? So, and even if you decide you want to do that, then you could have, different levels, signatory A, B, or approval levels, to avoid any form of theft at that level. So, so pretty much that's it. Always ensure you have significant controls in place to ensure that, no one person, to avoid any key person risk. You don't want any one person having ultimate control regarding your information and your account access. Always segregate duties when you delegate certain responsibilities to your bookkeepers.
Well, yeah, and that, having third-party only access, a big part of making sure you're not getting ripped off. We call it internal controls, but, making sure, that I said don't give the fox the keys to the hen house. They just make a meal out of you. And the thing is, when you look at people embezzling from you, a lot of times, they're not bad people. In this case, I mentioned my client got a couple $100,000 swiped from him. Obviously there was, the backstory there is, his bookkeeper said, saw how much money he was making and said, well, hey, you need to pay me more. And he goes, no, I think we're fine. And she said, you're going to pay me more. Right. So she took it and she was basically quit. We call it the quiet quit, but she's, well, hey, if I'm going to go out with a bang. And so she stopped doing her stuff and started ripping him off. And it took him about a month to figure it out. And that's the problem, right? So if you're not getting noticed on these things, again, it can easily get set up on your phone. You can easily, say, for example, that let's just say, a lot of times business owners, you need to give your controller or somebody the ability to move money. You can also limit their ability to do that. So they have their own separate online. Don't never give them your credentials. Have their own, I should say. But then limit what they can do, right? So that way, hey, yeah, they can rip you off, but they're going to get you for $5,000. That's it. Right? Don't give them the keys to the kingdom. And that's why we're talking about this on today's installment of Bosma On Business. You can lose $5,000, but if you lose $200,000, you can't make payroll. Now your business is at risk. So don't do things that are going to put your business at risk. You don't need to limit people's ability to put their hand in the cookie jar. Now, one of the things that I'm a fan of, and Linda, I want to get your opinion on, is Bill.com. Now it's called Bill. It used to be Bill.com. How does a software like Bill help prevent people from swiping from the cookie jar?
Right. Thank you, Mike. So Bill.com is a software that helps you to make payments of your bills, and it's a very secure payment system whereby you can do all your payments on there, and it's secured. You don't have to have the fears of cash transferring hands and all of that. They have already enabled it in such a way that money is being transferred securely within the system without any form of theft. So it's an efficient and a cost-efficient way to make payments online. Right.
And so the benefit of our listeners, that software, a Bill solution, Bill.com, allows you to have your bookkeeper or your controller authorize, set things up for payment, but then they have to go to you or another pay authorized person to approve it. And probably the best way to do that, people, is payroll. Like, people get ripped off in payroll every day, right? Because they have somebody else, they input the payroll and they don't know. And so, the part of not getting ripped off, sometimes you just can't put enough controls in place to not get ripped off. You just need to limit it and then catch it. Because as I mentioned, most people aren't terrible humans, because if they were terrible humans, you wouldn't hire them. Or if they became a terrible humans while they're at their spot, you'd let them go. But, all of a sudden there's that inflection point where, and probably the best example is this. There was a study done years ago, and so if and they put a $100 bill on the dashboard of a car in a parking lot. And it was amazing that if the window was rolled down, that a lot of times people walking by that car would swipe the $100 bill. But and then they said, well, if the window was rolled up and they locked the door, then nobody did. And then if the window was rolled up and the door was, the window was just rolled up, but the door was unlocked, and then, a little bit more swiped it. So basically, it's putting the security and controls in place. You don't even need to lock the car. You just need to roll the window up. So you just don't tempt somebody into making a bad decision, because we all have bad days. So just don't make it easy, and then make sure that people get caught. And the best way to do that is you, the owner, have your bank statement sent somewhere else other than the office. Talk about that, Linda.
Right. Yeah. So, so you could have different, like Mike said, you could have different levels of controls and approvals. You can have your bank statements being sent somewhere else, like he said, other than the office. And the whole of this, the idea behind this is, like Mike said, you really don't want to tempt anybody, because you don't know until you know, to be honest. If you don't have the information, there's only limited atrocities you can commit with anything. So have those controls in place. As much as you can, identify areas where there could be gaps. Find like the statements, approvals, and things like that. To what extent do you want to delegate? All of those are very key. And to be honest, this is where we step in. This is where we can come in for you. This is where, outsourcing all these functions to a professional comes in handy, because when you give a professional, there's very limited risk, to be honest, because the professional has a license to protect, to be honest. So not like professionals are not subject to all of this, but it's very limited. And you're going to get value for your money at the end of the day, and you take all of this risks out of the window. We handle all of that for you.
No, that's it. And just, having, you said, having it's called segregation of duties, right? Have somebody else open up the bank statement, then who's writing checks. So that way they can do the reconciliation and make sure that these checks are authorized. So if somebody, strokes a check and forges a signature, hey, guess what? They're going to get caught that first bank reconciliation. So I got Linda Chamah on the phone, outsourced accounting of Keystone CPAs out of Houston, Texas. When we come back, we're going to talk about, better ways to forecast success and some success stories for people that have exited their business because they did so. When we come back, it's Bosma on Business, News Talk 780 KOH.
Mike Carruthers shares little pieces of intel and interviews you can use to improve your life on the Something You Should Know podcast.
The next time you're looking for a job and have to write a cover letter, here's some advice from Skip Freeman, author of a book called Headhunters Hiring Secrets. Add a PS to the bottom of that cover letter. That can actually increase the chances of that letter being read by up to 75%. Some people actually glance down and read the PS first.
Something You Should Know. Search on YouTube or wherever you listen.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, on the phone. Linda Chamah from Keystone Outsourced Accounting, a very important part of our CPA firm. In fact, I'd say the genesis of the CPA firm, as we're riddled, is everybody needs this integrated turnkey service solution. And I guess, put succinctly, if you can just do taxes, but ultimately you need to do accounting to be able to do taxes. And so if you have that in-house, it helps people, which we do. And then if you're thinking of selling your business, you need to know how much money you need to be able to sell your business and retire in a way that you've, with a lifestyle that you've grown accustomed. So you need the Keystone Wealth Advisors. And obviously, to sell your business, you need Keystone Business Brokers /NAI Alliance, where our business brokers licenses are hung. And all of it has to work together. And I'll tell you this, folks. I've got 4 different transactions from a business broker side that we're helping folks with. And the number one problem we have is bad accounting. And I will tell you, business owners, I know what you're saying. I can hear you through the radio. That you're saying, well, no, I'm my girl, my gal, my guy, whoever. Well, no, I trust them with my life. They're the salt of the earth, and they're like super picky, man. They are so detail oriented. Well, guess what? Most bookkeepers, I probably 70-80% of them, all they do is they put in transactions into your software, which is probably QuickBooks. They don't have a reconciliation process to make sure that everything's been categorized correctly. And I'll just give you an example. I was reviewing a set of financials with Linda a couple days ago, and I was looking at the detail, the general ledger detail, because that's what we do, people, right? And there were something, and I'm a fan of, you just do a 12-month profit and loss, 12-month balance sheet. So you look at every month in one spreadsheet, and you can see the problems, right? You can see, it jumps out at you. 80% of bookkeepers, they have no idea. They put the stuff in, they reconcile the bank account, it must be good. Well, guess what? As Linda said, garbage in, garbage out. How easy is it to miscode something? It's super easy. And it happens, right? Don't business owners, don't freak out when you go and look at this detail we're telling you to, and somebody, coded it to repairs and expense instead of professional services. Just fix it and then put the process in place. That's why we like Bill.com. We like solutions like that, because then they're asking you as the business owner, when you get that authorization request, it's just going to say, I'm paying this much to this vendor. Off it goes. And this is how it's coded in the GL. And so if you're like, no, that's not, that needs to be in cost of goods sold or something. And guys, it is so important that you get that right. Otherwise, you have no ability to look at your financials and run your business. And so in that financial I was looking at with Linda, and we have great bookkeepers, but they had inadvertently coded some things that were as consultant expenses that should have been a whole different category that we were tracking on the face of the financial. And so it's just like, no, these vendors need to be here. And you can see it when you do that 12-month run, because you can see all of a sudden one day they all stopped. Right, this payable to ABC contractor, in June they stopped, and that's the same time that the new bookkeeper showed up. They all went, and so this other account went way up, and this one went to zero. Well, did they just stop using that consultant? Probably not. You look in the detail; they just coded it wrong. And the reason that matters is so important. When you look at like think of it this way, right? You're paying your CPA. Let's say you're on a retainer, paying them $3,000 a month. Well, if all of a sudden you're that half of that goes somewhere else, and it just shows $18,000, you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty good for what I get. But it was really 36. It is buried somewhere else. And then you're blowing somebody else up. So it's a way of looking at your financials, people, that, savvy business owners. This is what I learned working for the Fortune 500, and I work for the big firms, right? These people have such an attention to detail, and it matters. And so you business owners, as we're trying to get you ready to get sold, right? Give us a couple years to clean this stuff up. I helped a business sell at the end of last year, and she was running about $150,000 a year of, let's call them discretionary expenses through her profit and loss. Well, what that means to her is that if you deduct those, that dampened somebody's purchase price by $450,000, a multiple of 3. So I said, you got to get all this stuff out of here. So we got it out for 23, and then we, if really deductible, but it's not really related to the business, then we got it in a holding company or management company and deducted it there. But I'm telling you, especially small businesses, enterprise value of less than $5 million. Man, if you're getting bought by anybody that's sophisticated, we're like, well, no, of course I run my country club through here. Of course I run my, I travel through all this stuff. that weirds buyers out, man. It just freaks them out. So, and I get it, right? You're like, you're getting killed in taxes. Well, we can have your cake and eat it too. We just need to make sure it's tracked properly. So, when we had that discussion with that buyer on that $150,000 problem, I said, hey, this is what we did. We got it all the way down to the general ledger detail. It was fine. So, but man, it was a lot of energy. So just getting this buttoned up. And what we'll do for you, for our listeners, we'll give you an hour of a time. And maybe this one, you don't necessarily need my time, you need Linda's time. But just say, hey, give me, invite me to your QuickBooks account. I'll go in. I'll get, Linda will spend an hour in there, and she'll just tell you what she found. What's been reconciled, what hasn't been reconciled, where the problems are, I call it where the skeletons are buried. So, and I think those are things where, when you look forward, probably we were talking about in the last segment, how to not get ripped off by your employees or somebody else. When we look at budgeting, that nobody does, by the way. I do. I tell my clients to. We do the budgets for them, right? Get it into QuickBooks, so now you've got a baseline. So that way, if something goes, off the reservation, goes crazy, it's going to be obvious because you're like, well, we didn't budget for this. Why is this so big? And it'll just it shows up like a sore thumb. So, Linda, what's the best way for people that haven't budgeted in the past to come up with a budget?
So when you're budgeting, typically, if you haven't done it in the past, we start from a baseline. We look at, we're going to start forecasting based on what you have done in the past. So you may not have it formally drafted, but we're going to start as a baseline with what were your revenues, for instance, for last year, and then we're going to look at your historical trends and try to forecast into the future to say, okay, based on what you did last year, for instance, or 2 years ago, what do we expect revenues to be? What is it looking like for you? What are the sources of additional clients? What is the plan to bring in more revenue this year? What is your industry looking like? So basically, we just start from ground zero, and then we start to build gradually based on information we build from you, from the industry, from the economy, pretty much how is the economy going to perform, is it going to impact you directly, and things like that. And then from there, we start to budget gradually, and then we can build up. From there and have a baseline for you.
Right. Yeah. And I'm a fan, Linda, of looking at your last year's, by vendor, right? Just, okay, how much did I spend with this vendor, that vendor? And once you look at it that way, you're just like, why? For example, I'm looking at the Bosma Business Center. I do the same thing. I'm looking at expenses by vendor. And I'm like, holy smokes, why are we paying our cleaning company X number of dollars a month to clean something that really doesn't have, it's the first floor, it's, 7/10 unoccupied. We do have some offices, but for the benefit of our listeners, $500 a month for an office, turnkey, it's really nice. And I'm like going, they didn't reduce their bill when we lost a tenant. And so I'm like, they didn't ask me, I'm like, well, no, just tell them to stop cleaning the space. There's nobody in it. Gosh, right? That's how you find this stuff. You look at it by vendor, and you're like, okay, well, because then you have this epiphany. And probably the best example is this. I'm in the Cumulus studio, and I'll go to. This is funny. My producer's going to have a chuckle. I'll go to the break room in the Cumulus studio, and I'm always trying to forage for a cup of coffee, and so which means I got to find a coffee cup. But I open up these cabinets, and they are loaded with coffee and tea. They have 14 boxes of sugar, and I'm like, they have one. You can tell they have one of those delivery services that just automatically stocks this stuff, and nobody's tending the fort, right? It's just, and so they're like, oh, well, they need to make their quotas. And so they're like, oh, here, and they sign for you. They deliver the sugar, but do I need 14 sugar pouches? Probably not. Same thing in Bosma Business Center. I'm like, that again, Jack Flack, great game of business, great business read. He talks about, he has line item for toilet paper. Somebody's responsible for toilet paper in that manufacturing operation. So I'm like, well, gosh, toilet paper. So I look at what I'm paying for toilet paper. I'm like, holy smokes. Like, I understand in COVID, right? Everybody's stealing your toilet paper. You got to lock it up. But then I go into the storage closet. I got toilet paper stacked to the freaking roof, right? Because my supplier, here, I'm dropping them off. So they're really dropping off, but I just don't need them. And so what's it doing to my profit and loss? It's dampening. It's dampening it, right? What's it doing to the enterprise value of my business? I have a 12 multiple on the building. So think of it this way. I spent an extra $1,000 in toilet paper and supplies and nonsense because I'm not tending the farm. And that $1,000 at a 12 multiple, it dampens the enterprise value. In fact, my loan is coming up for the bank. That's $12,000 less that they're going to lend on the thing. So I'm like going, just why? Because I didn't pay attention to toilet paper? It matters. And so that's how, and what you don't want to do, you don't want to have to go, scrub around and go through invoices. Have your financial set up so that it's on the face of the financial, so it's obvious. And then you budget it and say, no, and then you tell them, no, we don't need toilet paper for 6 months. So you turn it off, right? You fire the janitorial company because you guys are idiots. You should have told me that they're cleaning a clean office, right? We're not partnered. We're not aligned, right? We're good. So, and then that's how you're not in partnership with somebody that gets it like you get it as a business owner. So, and again, without being overly upset about it, but it's just like people are just doing their job, but your job is to manage them. You can't manage them if you don't have financials and details to know what's going on. When we come back, Linda Chamah from Keystone CPAs is going to tell us the number one thing you need to know regarding managing the farm. It's Bosma on Business, News Talk 780 KOH.
Our house is a mess. Come on in. I'm Amber Wallen, internet comedian and host of your new favorite podcast, Fly on the Wall.
Okay, that's pretty presumptuous to assume that this is going to be their favorite podcast, by the way.
Anyway, that wasp that you just heard interrupt me is my husband.
And co-host, Benjamin Wallen.
Listen in as we discuss relationships and keeping our sweet baby kid alive.
Fly on the Wallen, wherever you listen.
Welcome back to Bosma On Business, your host, Mike Bosma. Hey, it's last Friday was tax day, so for partnerships and S corporations, 4/15, the big due date for individuals. Of course, the big one on that, people, is even if you extend, you got to pay your taxes. Got to pay Uncle Sam. We got to keep this government rolling. They got interest payments. I think it's $1 trillion a year now. Oof. Hurt me. So pay your taxes so that we can keep this thing going. If you need some help on that, 775-786-4900, mbosma@keystone.cpa. And if you need, myself or Linda to be able to jump on a call with your teams or Zoom, just to be able to, hey, what do you got? We'll take a look at it. We'll give you an hour of our time. No cost to you. Just we want to help business owners figure their stuff out. Probably one of the funnest things we're doing right now is starting up a private equity firm. So if you've been in business for years and you know how to run a business or you know how to do whatever you're doing, we're doing in the process of buying a paving company where I have an operator. He doesn't have any money. We have capital, and I have a bunch of friends who company went public last week, so they've got some scratch, some capital, and so we're saying, hey, we're going to partner with these entrepreneurs and buy these businesses. So that's a ton of fun and helping really create the middle class because nowadays without being a business owner, unless you're highbrow attorney or doctor or something, it's hard to get into that upper class, and that's what we want, right? We want to be able to provide for our families and provide a life, and you need to make a buck or two, and I think business is the way to get there. That's why we've been doing this for 13 years. As I mentioned on the phone, Linda Chamah from Keystone CPAs. Linda, tell us this. If we had to give somebody the big aha, the big takeaway, what's the number one thing that people just need to know about their financials to be smart about it?
Right. Thank you, Mike. So your financial statements, most importantly, beyond the numbers, you need to know that this is an information that should speak to you about your business. So just beyond what you're seeing on the face of it, we want to be able to delve deeper to know what is going on about this business, right? Your financials should tell you everything about your business, from the income statement to the balance sheet to your cash flow statements, pretty much. So just beyond keeping the numbers, you want to really understand your business from your financial statement. So I don't need to talk to you to understand your business. Just picking up your financial statements, I should be able to tell everything about your business. And if your financial statements are not doing that, then you probably have a gap, and it's something you need to look into.
No, and I agree, and it's all fixable, right? So I think that's probably the biggest thing is there's nothing on that financial statement that you as a business owner should be a surprise to you or not be certain of. And I think I would just encourage you, be a student of those financials and what they represent. Don't feel stupid or awkward about talking to a financial professional about what does this mean and how can I manage it better? And those are great questions for your CPA. And if they're unable to help you with that, because probably the best example of that I would tell you is people will go to their CPA and they'll say, well, I need tax planning. And they're like, well, stop making so much money. I'm selling one of these businesses, and their CPA said, buy more equipment. And now they have way too much equipment. It's created a mess. So if they don't have good answers that make sense to you, you need to talk to people that make sense to you. 775-786-4900, mbosma@keystone.cpa. Speaking of making sense, Alex Sonkin, he owns a project called VFO, virtual chief financial officer, and also the due diligence project's going to talk about some things about bringing a couple hundred accountants together and the magic that happens when that happens. That's on next week's installment of Bosma On Business. Until then, business owners, keep that business engine humming. We call it Bosma On Business. News Talk 780 KOH.
What would you do if you were hospitalized far from home? Don't worry, AirMed Care Network has you covered with Fly You Home memberships. Just one call and their providers will transport you back to a hospital of your choice to recover closer to loved ones at zero out-of-pocket cost to you. Fly You Home offers coast-to-coast and worldwide coverage and is remarkably affordable, starting at $159 a year. Learn more at airmedcarenetwork.com/fly.